Hello to everyone. Myself, Dr. Sonali Gaikwad, Assistant Professor, DGB Danan Law College, Sholapur. In this video, I will be speaking on the concept of Stockholm Conference, which is one of the international conference and which played a very important role in the development of environmental protection. Stockholm Conference. The Stockholm Conference was the first conference which was conducted by the United Nations Conference on Human Environment, which mainly focused on the environmental issues at the international level. And officially, this is known as a Stockholm Declaration of 1972. So, this conference was organized in Stockholm, Sweden from 15th to 16th June in the year 1972. And this was the first conference which communicated the environmental issues, the problems at the international scenario. And they tried to find out a way so that we can tackle all the states together as a unit. They could tackle with the problems of pollutions which are dealt with air, land, and water. So, this conference was basically held that we can make a better tomorrow for the coming generation. Stockholm Conference in 19 when it was held in 1972, India had also participated in the same, and at that time, Mrs. Indira Gandhi former Prime Minister of India, she made a statement which was very important. And she stated that poverty is the greatest polluter of them all. So, where pollution is concerned, pollution is basically caused with the underdeveloped and developing countries. Speaking of some of the very highlighting features of Stockholm Declaration, conference. This conference was basically it was attended by 114 government delegations at the time of Stockholm Declaration. They laid down 26 principles and they were broadly declared to be recognizing the mm, human impact on the environment. So it was for the first time in the history that the environmental issues had been recognized publicly on a very large scale on a global scenario. Stockholm Conference Declaration broadly recognizes global issues and has eventually come up with 29 principles and with some frameworks as well, so that they could bind all the countries together to deal with these environmental issues. So this conference it created a history in the world because it was addressing the environmental issues for the first time at the global level. The main purpose of this Stockholm Declaration was to save the world from all the evils that were destroying the environment. Second important thing was they wanted to preserve the natural resources of every state. And third was to control the pollution, which is a most important issue which was being facing even at that time by all the states. So, to protect from other several environmental issues so that they could take on the steps with an intention that they could play a role of a precautionary role model to protect from other environmental issues which may arise in future. So, in other words, we could say that the main purpose was basically to save the earth. There even is a slogan of Stockholm Declaration of 1972, only one earth. So this famous has basically it become very, very popular at those days. So the Stockholm Declaration of 1972, it comprises of nearly about 26 principles and several other submissions were laid down, several other recommendations were made with regard to that. So in this case, every principle which is laid down by the Stockholm Conference was considered to be an important provisions of the declarations, and I have just shortly stated these 16 principles in brief. That is, the first principle which they had discussed was regarding the right to protect the environment. Second principle was management of natural resources. Now, if we speak of principle one, obviously, if we look into Indian Constitution, Article 21 has stated that it is one of the fundamental right of every citizen that they enjoy a healthy environment. Every person has a right to live in a healthy environment. So this principle is exactly the same as that right to protect the environment. Second principle as management of natural resources. So natural resources like whether it is minerals and oils and fuels. So every state has to lay down the policies at their at the national level so that they can lay down a systematic policies as to how they could deal and what is the importance of natural resources. The third principle speaks of management of renewable resources. Renewable resources, as we all know, that the resources which could be renewed, so a proper policy should be drawn for the same. Fourth principle speaks of conservation of wildlife. So from the Indian perspective, we have Forest Act, we have Wildlife Protection Act, we have Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. So this is what that is expected from each state, that they have to lay down the statutes which will lead in a better future or to have a better environment. Principle 5 speaks of management of renewable resources. So they they have taken into consideration both the aspects, renewable resources as well as non-renewable resources. Principle 6 speaks of pollution control. So as I um, we know that there are various aspects which have been faced by every state regarding environmental pollution. Different kinds of pollution exist, and a proper parameter have to be laid down so that it could be controlled in a proper way. Principle 7 speaks of prevention of pollution of seas. So seas, marine law should be developed. Principle 8 speaks of economic and social development. Principle 9 speaks of underdevelopment and natural disasters. So, again, underdevelopment is one of the major problems of why there is such an extent of environmental pollution. Natural disasters which occurs, and there should be a proper framework and policy to deal with that, the same. Then principle 10 speaks of stability of prices of primary commodities. Um, 11 speaks of environmental policies. So different policies should be framed by the states. Then 12 speaks of environmental protection education. So this is one of the thing which can be easily done by every state. Like Indian government also, they have made various efforts at all the levels. Like if you, for example, if you go to theaters to watch a movie before the film begins, there are these kind of education films made on protection of environment or protection of health and so on. So such kind of things has to be developed more and more so that it reaches each and every citizen in a very proper way. Then principle 13 speaks of rational management of resources, whereas 14 speaks of rational planning, then human settlement, and setting of environmental pollution control agencies at national level. Obviously, in India, we have pollution control board at state and also at national level, and they have been established both under the Water Act and Air Act. Then use of science and technology, obviously that should be as a preventive measure to protect the environment. Education in environmental matters, and these are some of the fews, like ban of nuclear weapons, development of international law so as to strengthen more international strategies and plannings. Implementation of agenda should be done by every country. There has to be international cooperation. Every state has to know their own rights and responsibilities, so that they can take all the proper measures and steps for environmental protections. Further, there should be more scope given to scientific research, which will ultimately uh, 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 play a very important role as to new researchers, which will protect and improve the environment at the global level. So these are some of the very important principles, and it was being a major point to be discussed was that these policies, these principles should be adopted by every state at their own individual policies. Thank you.